Hi, third grade. We're going to start another book. It's called Mr. Granite is from Another Planet. The boringest store in the world. My name is AJ, and I hate school. Do you know which months are the best months of the year? July and August, of course, because there's no school over the summer. Yay! The only problem now, it's September. Boo! Bummer after the summer. School starts tomorrow, so my mom said we had to go to the store called Staples to buy back to school supplies. Ugh. Staples is the boringest store in the history of the world. They don't sell video games or toys or any cool stuff. They just sell pens and pencils and ultra boring junk like that. My mom had a list of things I had to get for third grade. After we found the boring book covers, boring binders, boring colored pencils, and boring glue sticks, I wanted to get a pen with a laser beam in it. Laser beams are cool. I saw this movie where they used a laser beam to kill aliens from outer space. But they don't sell pens like that at Staples. They do have one cool thing, a copy machine. Copy machines are cool because you can put your head on the glass and make a funny picture of your face. It only costs 8 cents. But you have to be sure to close your eyes or you'll go blind. I stuck my head in the copy machine and closed my eyes. I reached for the start button when I heard the most horrible sound in the history of the world. Hi, Arlo. Ugh. It was Andrea Young, this annoying girl in my class with curly brown hair. I hate her. Andrea calls me by my real name because she knows I don't like it. I took my head off the copy machine. Andrea was there with her mom, who looks just like Andrea, but with wrinkles. Are you buying back to school supplies too, Arlo? Andrea asked. No, I told her. I'm skydiving. When somebody asks you a dumb question, you should always give them a dumb answer. That's the first rule of being a kid. I would never put my face in a copy machine, said Andrea. Why not? Because I'm one of a kind, Andrea said. You should put your face in a paper shredder instead, I suggested. Andrea rolled her eyes. Why can't a copy machine fall on her head? My mom and Andrea's mom were talking about the weather. Grown-ups are really interested in the weather. Nobody knows why. So I was forced to talk to Andrea. Which do you like better, Arlo? Andrea asked. This notebook with a picture of kittens on it, or this one with elephants on it? Do they have a notebook with a picture of elephants stomping on kittens? I asked. Andrea rolled her eyes again. Our mom said we could play around in the office chairs for a few minutes while they talked about the weather. Let's pretend we're grown-ups working in a real office, Andrea said. I sat in one of the desks and picked up the fake phone. Send over $1,000,000, I barked into the phone. Now! Where's my coffee? Andrea shouted. I'll die if I don't have coffee. You're fired, I barked again. Get out. Pretending to be grown-ups was fun. I need a file with some reports, Andrea said. She rolled her chair over to a big filing cabinet. When she pulled it open, the most amazing thing in the history of the world happened. A head popped up. Good day, mates, said the head. Ah, we screamed. It was Mr. Granite, our new third grade teacher. Chapter 2. We want chocolate cake. The first day of school is the worst day of the year. But the nice thing is that the third graders are allowed to ride their bikes to school. I rode with my friends Ryan and Michael. After we locked our bikes to the bike rack, we were told to go to the all-purpose room for an assembly. The teachers were sitting on the stage, and they were all wearing green t-shirts that said PAI on them. Mr. Klutz, our principal, was up there too. He has no hair at all. I mean, none. Mr. Klutz was wearing a green shirt too, and his head was even painted green. Mr. Klutz is nuts. Is it St. Patrick's Day? I asked Neil, who we call the nude kid even though he wears clothes. St. Patrick's Day is in March, dumbhead, said Neil. So's your face, I replied. After we finished pledging the allegiance, Mr. Klutz went to the microphone. Welcome back to Elementary School, he announced. I want to introduce the new staff members. This is Miss Jaffe, our vice principal, and this is Mr. Brad, our school counselor. And over there is our new third grade teacher, Mr. Granite. The three of them stood up. Everybody clapped. I waved to Mr. Granite. I knew he was going to be my third grade teacher because I met him on the beach over the summer. I even saw him yesterday at Staples. We're wearing green today to show that elementary school cares about the environment, said Mr. Klutz. This year, we're going to use less energy, create less waste, and help the planet. The program will be under Mr. Granite's supervision. Wow, I whispered to Ryan. Mr. Granite has supervision. That means he can see through walls. You returning students know I like to challenge you, Mr. Klutz continued. So here's a new challenge. If elementary school is named the greenest school in the country, for the month of September, we will have all-you-can-eat chocolate cake party. Yay! Everyone went crazy because we all love chocolate cake. That's the first rule of being a kid. Chapter 3, Pedal Power. After the assembly, Mr. Granite led us to our new classroom. There were posters all over the wall with pictures of rocket ships, stars, and planets. It was cool. But the weird thing was, instead of desks, the room was filled with exercise bicycles. Why are there bikes in here? Asked this annoying girl named Emily, who was Andrea's crybaby friend. It's part of our new PAL program, said Mr. Granite. Pedal and learn. Instead of burning coal or oil to get electricity to run our school, we're going to pedal these exercise bikes. So we'll learn new things, save energy, and get exercise all at the same time. It's a win-win. We get to ride bikes to school. Cool. Bikes are fun. I have a trick bike at home. I hopped on a bike between Michael and Ryan. In third grade, we're going to learn a lot about space, Mr. Granite told us. So start pedaling, pals. I know a poem about space, I said, as I started to pedal my bike. Mr. Granite said I could recite it. It goes like this. Boys go to Mars to get candy bars. Girls go to Jupiter to get more stupider. That's not nice, Arlo, said Andrea. Neither is your face. As we pedaled our bikes, Mr. Granite told us lots of stuff about the planets and stars. Did you know Venus is the hottest planet? It can get up to 900 degrees there. I hope they have a lot of swimming pools on Venus, because when it gets really hot, I want to jump in a pool. Did you know that a day on Jupiter is less than 10 hours long? Did you know that astronauts are a little taller in space because there's no gravity to push their bones together? Did you know that the ancient Greeks called our galaxy the Milky Way because they thought it was made of drops of milk? Those Greeks are weird. It takes 8 minutes for the sunlight to reach Earth Mr. Granite told us. So if the sun exploded right now, we would still have 8 minutes to live. Emily jumped off her bike and started freaking out. 8 minutes to live, she yelled. We've got to do something. Then she went running out of the room. Emily is weird. At night, Mr. Granite told us, you can see over 1,000 stars with your naked eye. But if you ask me, it makes no sense because we don't wear clothes on our eyes anyway. Everybody started giggling because Mr. Granite said the word naked. Anytime anybody says naked, you have to giggle. It's the first rule of being a kid. Now, Mr. Granite said, let's learn about Uranus. Everybody giggled again. It's hard to learn stuff when your teacher keeps saying words like naked and Uranus. After a while, my legs started to feel tighter. Riding a bike isn't nearly as much fun when you're just staying in one place and learning stuff. I started to pedal slower. That's when something weird happened. All the lights went out. Suddenly, the classroom was dark. Eek! Screamed the girls as if they'd never been in the dark before. Who turned out the lights? Michael said. You did, said Mr. Granite. You need to pedal faster. We all started pedaling faster and the lights went back on. Keep pedaling, shouted Mr. Granite. I thought I was going to die. Chapter 4, Going Green. Boy, Mr. Granite wasn't kidding about making elementary school green. Everybody was doing their part to save energy and help the environment. Miss Laser, our school custodian, put solar panels up on the roof to collect the sun's rays and turn them into electricity. Miss Laser is bizarre. Miss Hannah, our art teacher, hates throwing stuff away. She told us to bring in plastic bags from home instead of throwing them in the garbage. She showed us how to make plastic bags into butterflies, kites, and dream catchers. Miss Hannah is bananas. Mr. Docker, our science teacher, is off his rocker. He has a car that runs on potatoes instead of gas. Mr. Docker converted the school bus to run on potatoes too. And he helped Miss Yonkers, our computer teacher, to hook up potatoes to power the school computers. So now she says that PC stands for potato computer. Miss Yonkers is bonkers. Miss Cooney, our school nurse, brought a giant tube of toothpaste to school one day. It was about the size of a first grader. Miss Cooney is loony. She said that when you buy large sizes of stuff, you don't have to go shopping as often. There's less waste, and you save money too. Miss LaGrange, our lunch lady, told us to pack our lunch in reusable containers instead of in paper bags so we'd have less garbage. She also brought in a bunch of cows to graze on the grass in the field behind the school. Now the lawn doesn't need to be mowed anymore. And we get free milk too. I don't know where Miss LaGrange got the cows. I guess she went to rent a cow. You can rent anything. Miss LaGrange is strange. Miss Ropey, our librarian, read us a book about how trees give off oxygen, which is good stuff, and absorb carbon dioxide, which is bad stuff. Then she helped us plant a tree in the middle of the library. Miss Ropey is lopey. Mr. Klutz, well, he put up a giant windmill in the field behind the school. When the wind turns the blades of the windmill, it makes electricity. The whole school was going green. Part of the reason was that we all knew it was good to save energy and reduce waste. The other part was that we all liked chocolate cake. Do any of you have any other ideas to help the environment? Mr. Granite asked us while We were pedaling to nowhere. Little Miss I Know Everything was waving her hand in the air like she was trying to signal a boat across the ocean. But Mr. Granite called on me instead. So na 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 boo boo on Andrea. I know a way to save energy, I said. You should close the school down and let us stay home all day. Then we can sit around and do nothing. That would save a lot of energy. Everybody laughed, even though I didn't say anything funny. How about you, Andrea? Asked Mr. Granite. Can you think of another way we can help the environment? We could use both sides of every scrap of paper, Andrea said, and then we could recycle it. That's an excellent idea, Andrea, Mr. Granite said. Andrea stuck out her tongue at me. What is her problem? Oh, snap, whispered Ryan. Andrea stuck her tongue out at you, AJ. Are you going to take it? At Andrea's house, I told the class, they use both sides of the toilet paper and then recycle it. That's gross, Arlo, Andrea said. So's your face, I told her. Oh, snap, said Ryan. Chapter 5, Goo Goo Gaga. We were about to get on our exercise bikes the next morning when the school secretary, Miss Patty, made an announcement over the intercom. Teachers, please do not throw your teacups around the teacher lounge. Thank you. That was weird. Okay, pals, said Mr. Granite. It's time for language arts, so start pedaling. We all started pedaling, but we didn't learn anything about language arts because you'll never believe in 1,100,000 years who walked in the door at that very moment. Nobody. Because if you walked into a door, it would hurt. But you'll never believe who walked into the doorway. It was our old teacher, Miss Daisy. She was with her husband, Mr. Mackey, who was our reading teacher. We hadn't seen Miss Daisy since we graduated from 2nd grade in June. Miss Daisy, we all shouted. Mrs. Daisy, said Mr. Granite, to what do we owe the pleasure of your company? That's grown-up talk for what are you doing here? I missed my kids, she replied. We missed you too, said Andrea, the big brown-noser. Miss Daisy was holding something in her arms, but we couldn't see what it was because it was wrapped up in a pink blanket. Did you bring us a present? I asked. Not exactly, said Mr. Mackey. It's a baby, dumbhead, shouted Andrea, and Miss Daisy had her baby. All the girls rushed over to look, as if having a baby is a big deal. What's her name? Andrea asked. Jackie, Miss Daisy said. Jackie Mackey. What a lovely name, Emily said. She's beautiful. She's adorable, Andrea said. She stinks, I said, holding my nose. I think Jackie just pooped, said Mr. Mackey. We'll change her diaper in a minute. I wasn't going to go near that thing, especially after it pooped. But all the girls were coochie-cooing, saying goo goo gaga to Jackie. All babies say goo goo gaga. Nobody knows why. It must be the first rule of being a baby. I think Jackie looks like you, Miss Daisy, said Emily. No, said Andrea. I think Jackie looks just like you, Mr. Mackey. I think she looks just like Mr. Klutz, I said. She's as bald as a balloon. Arlo, that's mean, said Andrea. Well, it's true. All babies look that way. Jackie Mackey started drooling, and then she started blowing spit bubbles. Then she put her foot in her mouth and started sucking on her toes. I thought it was pretty disgusting, but the girls thought it was cute. I know that if I started drooling in school, blowing spit bubbles and sucking on my toes, nobody would think it was cute. I would probably get kicked out of school. Wah! Jackie cried. Wah! I think she bit her own foot, I said. Jackie might be pooping some more, said Miss Daisy. We better go now. Babies are weird. Chapter 6. English is weird. Okay, everybody, back on your bikes, Mr. Granite said. It's time for language arts. Ugh, I hate language arts. Language is boring. Art is boring. So there's nothing more boring than language arts. Except maybe math. Math is really boring. There are some things I don't understand about the English language, Mr. Granite said. Like what? Asked Andrea. Little Miss Know-It-All keeps a dictionary on her desk so she can show everybody how smart she is. What is it that noses run and feet? Why is it that noses run and feet smell? Mr. Granite replied. Shouldn't it be the other way around? What do you mean? Asked Emily. Well, it seems to me that feet should run and noses should smell, Mr. Granite said. So why do people say noses run and feet smell? It's just an expression, said Michael. It makes no sense, said Ryan. My feet don't smell, I said. They do too, AJ, said Neil, the new kid. When you had a sleepover at my house, I had to sleep with your feet in my face. A nose would run if it had legs, Michael said. Feet could smell if they had a nose, said Ryan. Yeah, if you had a nose attached to your foot could smell, I pointed out. Arlo, you're just trying to get out of doing math next period, said Andrea. I am not. R2. We went back and forth like that for a little while until Mr. Granite told us to knock it off. Why are there no eggs in eggplant? He asked the class. And why is there no ham in hamburger? And hot dogs aren't made from dogs. And pineapple doesn't have any apples in it, or pine for that matter. Mr. Granite's right, said Ryan. English is weird, I said. Why are boxing rings square? Asked Mr. Granite. If they're rings, they should be round. Yeah, some kid agreed. If one tooth and another tooth are called teeth, and one goose and another goose are called geese, then why aren't one moose and another moose called meese? Yeah, Neil said. What's up with that? Why do we play at a recital and recite at a play? Asked Mr. Granite. When a house burns up, how can it also burn down? And why do we drive on the parkway and park on the driveway? Yeah, everybody shouted. Mr. Granite's right, I said. The English language is messed up. If you ask me, we should complain. Who are you going to complain to, Arlo asked Andrea. The President, I said. We should write a letter to the President of the United States. Andrea rolled her eyes, but Mr. Granite said that writing a friendly letter to the President was a great idea. So na boo boo to Andrea. Mr. Granite passed out paper to everybody. It's hard to write when you're riding a bike, so I kept my letter short and sweet. Dear Mr. President, I am a third grade student at elementary school. I don't think it's fair that your feet smell. Do you have a nose attached to your feet? Sincerely, AJ. Mr. Granite goes overboard. It was recess. We were on the swings in the playground. Me and the guys were talking about important stuff, like who won the big game last year. Andrea and her friends were talking about girly stuff, like what color they should paint their toenails. That's when Mr. Granite came over. He was carrying some kind of a machine. Everybody off the swings, he shouted. Why, we all asked. I need to attach this generator to the top of the swing set, Mr. Granite replied, so every time you swing back and forth, you'll make electricity. We had to get off the swing set and go over to the field near the cows and the windmill. I miss Mrs. Daisy, said Neil, the new guy. She was normal. We used to say Miss Daisy was weird, Michael said, but Mr. Granite is even weirder. Moo, said a cow. Mr. Granite's going overboard with this green stuff, said Ryan. He's falling out of a boat? I asked. No, dumbhead, said Ryan. I mean, he's getting carried away. I don't see anybody carrying him away, I pointed out. I looked around to make sure nobody was carrying Mr. Granite away. Moo, said a cow. I heard that Mr. Granite is working on a machine that will make electricity every time you blink your eyes. We'll have to wear it like a pair of glasses. That's crazy, I said. I heard that Mr. Granite asked the music teacher, Mr. Loring, to write a song with just one note in it, said Neil, the new kid. Why, we all asked. So he wouldn't waste any notes, Neil said. That will be the most boring song in the whole world, I said. Moo, agreed a cow. Andrea and her friends were sitting on a bench a few feet away, looking all worried. What's eating you? I asked Andrea. Did you get an A- on the math quiz? No, Arlo, she replied. I got an A+. But I just figured something out. What? We all asked. Maybe Mr. Granite isn't a real teacher after all, Andrea said. Did you ever think of that? What do you mean? I asked. Maybe he's just pretending to be a teacher, she said. I think that Mr. Granite is from another planet. That's nuts, I told her. Think about it, Arlo. Mr. Granite knows a lot about planets and stars and space, right? Yeah. He doesn't understand the English language very well, right? Yeah. He has supervision too, added Neil. He can see through walls. Did you ever notice that Mr. Granite doesn't have any hair growing out of his ears and nose? Ryan asked. Andrea might be right. After all, the first rule of being a grown-up is that you have hair growing out of your ears and nose. My dad has to trim his nose hair every week. Maybe Mr. Granite is from another planet. Moo, said the cow. He doesn't look like an alien, Michael said. Aliens are little green guys with big heads. Maybe Mr. Granite is disguised as a human, I suggested. Yeah, said Ryan. Maybe if we peel off his human mask, underneath we'd find a little green guy with a big head. Mr. Granite is nice, Emily said. Maybe he's a good alien. Yeah, like E.T., said Ryan. That's my favorite movie. Maybe Mr. Granite is a nice alien who was left here on Earth like E.T. There are no nice aliens, Neil said. You're supposed to kill aliens. Yeah, I said, with laser beams. Stop trying to scare Emily, I said. Andrea said. Mr. Granite is probably going to take over the world and turn us into flesh-eating robots, I said. We've got to do something, said Emily, and she went running away. The only problem was that Emily ran right into a cow. She was on the ground, freaking out. What a crybaby. Moo, said the cow. Oh, said Emily, which is moo upside down and backwards. My dad's a policeman, Michael said. He says you can't accuse people of stuff unless you have proof. So let's get proof that Mr. Granite is an alien, said Neil, the new kid. How are we going to get proof? I have an idea, Andrea told everyone. Let's follow Mr. Granite home after school. I have my camera in my backpack. We can snoop around. I'll take pictures of him when he peels off his human mask and we'll have proof. Everyone agreed with that Andrea was a genius and that she should get the Nobel Prize. What a prize. That's a prize they give out to people who don't have bells. Chapter 8. The world's biggest iPod. All afternoon I was watching Mr. Granite very carefully to see if his face was going to come off. Finally, 3 o'clock came and the bell rang. Any questions? Mr. Granite said as we got our stuff out of our cubbies. Are you going to destroy the planet? I asked. Will you peel off your face? Neil asked. Don't be silly, replied Mr. Granite. Once we got outside, me, Michael, and Ryan raced to the bike rack. Andrea and Emily were already there. How will we find out where Mr. Granite lives? Asked Emily. We should drop pieces of candy on the ground. That's what the boy in E.T. did. I'm not wasting my candy, I said. We should stalk Mr. Granite, suggested Michael. You mean we should hit him with a celery? I asked. What good would that do? No, dumbhead, said Andrea. Stalking is, she never got a chance to finish her sentence, because at that very second, Mr. Granite zoomed past us on his bike. Look, said Ryan, there he goes. We all hopped on our bikes and followed Mr. Granite, being careful not to let him see us. Maybe Mr. Granite will make our bikes fly, said Ryan. That's what E.T. did. Will you forget about E.T. already? Michael told Ryan. Finally, Mr. Granite turned into a driveway. Well, I don't mean he became a driveway. That would be weird. He just rode his bicycle up into a driveway next to a house. There was a big white box in front of the garage. It had the words pods on it. Hey, check it out, I told everybody. Look at the size of that iPod. Mr. Granite lives in an iPod, said Michael. Man, I said, how many songs do you think will fit in that iPod? It's not an iPod, dumbhead, said Andrea. It's one of those big storage boxes. It says pods. Oh, it made sense that Mr. Granite lived in a pod. I saw this movie called Invasion of Body Snatchers. It had these pod people who looked just like humans, but they worked secretly to spread more pods until they could replace the entire human race. It was cool. Anybody who lives in a pod has to be an alien, I said. My mom says we should accept people no matter where they live, Emily said. Your mom is weird, I told her. Maybe he's building a transmitter in there to connect with his home planet, said Ryan, like in E.T. Give it a rest with E.T., will you? I told him. Mr. Granite opened a door and went inside the pod thing. We all snuck up to it like we were secret agents. It was cool. Andrea took a little camera out of her backpack. I'll bet he's taking off his human mask in there, Michael whispered. I'll snap the picture when he peels off his face, Andrea whispered. That will be a real Kodak moment, I said. I'm scared, whispered Emily. Maybe we should. But she never got a chance to finish a sentence, because at that very second, Mr. Granite popped out of the iPod. Eek, we all screamed. Good day, mates, Mr. Granite said. He looked completely normal. What can I do for you blokes? We were just wondering if you trim your nose hairs. You followed me all the way home to ask me if I trim my nose hair? Asked Mr. Granite. Well, actually, we wanted to know where you were born. I came from Neptune, said Mr. Granite. Wow, we all said, which is Mom upside down. So it's true. Mr. Granite is from another planet. Yes, he continued, Neptune, New Jersey. Then my parents moved to Australia. Oh. Okay, we will finish the rest of this book next week. Have a good week.